The 2024 NFL trade deadline has officially come and gone. And the Baltimore Ravens are getting roasted a little bit for their final trade deadline haul. We talk about that, the positives of Baltimore's moves, and so much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Allstriker of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on this midweek edition of the show, making Locked On Ravens both the part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Friend, available for you all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form, where you can follow along, subscribe over there. We bring you 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. 2024 trade deadline is over in the Baltimore Ravens. They acquired Diontae Johnson last week, and they acquired Tre'Davious White yesterday. That's it. No pass rusher. And because of that, Ravens are getting roasted. The fan base certainly has let the team know that they're not happy with that. And obviously, you know, it was very well known how much the Ravens needed a pass rusher. Baltimore decides not to move on that front. I'm sure they tried in some way, shape, or form, most definitely, but just did not come to fruition. And so we'll talk about kind of the discourse surrounding Baltimore's trade deadline. We'll also talk about the positives, because look, if we're going to look at some of the roasts and some of the stuff and the negatives of it, we're also going to look at the positives, right? We're going to look at both sides. So what we do here on Locked On Ravens, we want to look at all sides of the story here. So we'll take a look at everything regarding that, Johnson, White, and just everything that goes on there. And then we'll also look ahead a little bit to maybe what could come to fruition for the Ravens over the next couple of days. Obviously, big Thursday night matchup with Cincinnati coming up tomorrow night. So we'll be getting into all of that as well. But let's start off here with the Ravens roasts, I guess. And again, the fan base, for the most part, and again, I think the fan base is kind of divided a little bit on this and split, at least based off of what I'm seeing. But a lot of what I'm seeing is people not being happy with the lack of pass rushing addition. I think when you look at the two trades by themselves, the Ravens improved their depth. They got a number 3 wide receiver. They got a number 4 corner, or a number 3 safety, if you want to talk about moving Trey White there. The value there that Costa got, I thought was fine. I thought that was fine. You give up a 5th round pick for Diontae Johnson and a 6th. That's good value. You know, you get Trey White and a 7th for 7th. That's essentially a free player. Now, the thing with those two is they're not necessarily big needle movers, but the Ravens were never going to be in that big needle mover conversation anyway. We talked about that on a live show when we instantly reacted to the Ravens' moves and the Trey White acquisition. I had said, and I think everybody understood, that like a Myles Garrett, a Max Crosby, one of those big moves was never going to be in the equation for the Ravens. So then you're looking at guys like Azeez Ojulari, you're looking at guys like Calais Campbell and Tre'Davious Clowney, Arden Key, etc. And when the Ravens made the move for Trey White, Darren Orlovsky was sitting there when Adam Schefter broke this news, and he was like, okay, nice move, but you know, he said, all I care about is a pass rusher. Or the Ravens in the market for a pass rusher or pass rushers. And this was about with 39 minutes, 40 minutes ago before the deadline. And Adam Schefter said, not right now. And that ended up being what it was. So, you know, even former players were getting in on this and being like, okay, Trey White's a fine move, I guess, but what about the pass rush, right? That's what everybody's looking at. Everybody's looking at what would the pass rush move be, and it was nowhere to be found. There was a segment over on First Things First on Monday. I think, it was Monday. And Chris Broussard said, oh, Marshawn Lattimore, he could go to the Ravens maybe, right? That was the movie he would like to see. And then you got Kevin Wilde saying, oh, I'm going Ravens too. I'm saying Tre'Davious Clowney to the Ravens because obviously I think Lattimore's a better player, but Clowney fits the need. And so everybody was aware that, hey, the Ravens, pass rush, maybe big move, but none of that ended up happening. And I think that's where the disappointment comes in with the fan base. And look, I said that the trade deadline was a disappointment for the Ravens. That is my stance on it. There are certainly positives to the moves, and we'll get into those in the second part of the show. But my disappointment doesn't come in the moves themselves, right? The Trey White move, if you move him to safety, I like it a lot better. As we talked about on the live show, we actually talked that out live on the live show. We were going through chat talking about all that. But it's about the fact, for me, with Diontae Johnson, there's a guy there that I think can be a solid number 3 receiver. I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get. With Trey White, there's a lot less known with him. There's a lot more unknown, I guess, is the other side of that, where he was a healthy scratch in 3-4 of the Rams' latest games. And there was some regret with playing him as early as they had to and as often as they had to in the season. He was a great player in Buffalo, but he was rated, I believe, 175th out of 200 cornerbacks, according to Pro Football Focus. And the Rams and the Ravens, you might think they play different, at least the coverage scheme, but they actually are pretty similar when it comes to all that they do. So the Trey White thing, his depth, fine. I think you upgraded your corner 4. I think he's an upgrade over Jalen Davis in that case. If you move him to safety, he's an upgrade over Eddie Jackson. Diontae Johnson is an upgrade over Nelson Aguilar. But you don't go after – well, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure Baltimore went after a guy, but you don't make a move, I'll say, at your biggest need. And so now it's just a matter of risking it with those guys on the roster already. I'm not sitting here, and again, I don't want to be the guy that says, the Ravens aren't winning the Super Bowl because they didn't get a pass rusher. I don't believe that. I think that the Ravens can still win the Super Bowl with the roster they have. I think the offense is too good not to put in that conversation. The defense has the talent, at least, to turn it around. But now it's on Kyle Van Noy. Now it's on Odafe Owen. Now it's on Nnamdi Madubuike and Travis Jones and everybody else you want to throw in that conversation. Plus, we talk about depth with wide receiver and we talk about depth with corner. Well, it would have been really nice, I think, if you're the Ravens, to add some pass rushing juice. And then if somebody goes down, knock on wood, right? There it is, knock on wood, that does not happen. But if that were to happen, you would have someone else, a highly reliable player that you could plug in there. So it doesn't end up happening. If Kyle Van Noy goes down, how confident do you feel in an edge group with Odafe Owe, David Ojabo, who hasn't played the past 2 weeks, Ngakoue, Tavius Robinson, Disa Isaac? Tavius Robinson looked great. That's a guy that I think has to step up too. If they can get production out of Tavius Robinson, hey, maybe we can call him the deadline acquisition. So, again, value from Eric DeCosta on these deals was fine, right? I have no issue with the value Eric DeCosta got. I have no issues with them trading for a wide receiver, trading for a cornerback. Those were both needs that I had for the Ravens. But, we have all watched this Ravens pass rush over the last month plus. I mentioned the stat on the live show that since the Lions lost Aiden Hutchinson, the team with the worst pass rush win rate in the league is the Baltimore Ravens, 23%. We've seen Jameis Winston have 5 seconds to throw at a time. We've seen Bo Nix have 5 seconds to throw at a time. It's just not as consistent as it needs to be. And I do think, I want to put this on record, and I have before. I did it literally yesterday. I want to put on record that I think Travis Jones helps this pass rush immensely. But guys have to beat their blocks. Guys have to beat double teams. Guys have to contribute. And while you can plug in a guy like Travis Jones and hope that solves a lot of things, and I think it will, it would have been nice to have another guy. So that's where I think the roasts and the disappointment, because I saw a lot of it on social media, and I don't know what we're going to hear about it today, if anything, but that was the consensus, at least from what I saw. Maybe it was different from what you saw, but from what I saw, the consensus was, you know what? Low risk, medium reward moves. Yes, agree. Pass rush was a need, and it was a disappointment they didn't get a pass rush. Yes, agree. I think, to me, I agree the deadline is a C-. I said that on a live show. I think it's C-, because I'll give DeCosta credit for the value, most definitely. But I think it was a miss not going after a pass rusher. So, look, the fan base let the team hear it, and I think now you could potentially, we'll talk about this in the final part of the show, you could maybe sign somebody that gets let go over these next couple of days. A couple of guys already have, so we'll see. But for now, it is taking that risk of, hey, can the guys step up? Can people step up when it is needed? Right now, it's a little inconsistent. It hasn't happened on the pass rushing front, but the Ravens end up getting Deontay Johnson and Trey White at the deadline. And coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about some of the positives of those moves for the Ravens and also continue diving into the discourse surrounding them. So be sure to stay tuned, plenty to talk about on the show. First, this show is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Hey, Ravens fans, remember our great partner, Ultimate Pro Football GM? Well, they're back, and they have added an amazing new game mode I need to tell you about. The game that has you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory now has a new head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, and hiring coaching staff, now you also get to call offensive plays during games as well. Additionally, you'll dig up new tools you can work with, such as individual training camps and upgraded negotiation system. So this fun and realistic game just got a lot better. If you already have it installed, be sure to do an update so you can try out the new mode. If you don't have it yet, download it right now. It's a must-have for all football fans. I love it, and I know you will too. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Play on the go as you want to and when you want to. And there's a special offer for Locked On fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you'll want in creating your dynasty. Download the games, visit ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today. And the show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot on up to 100 times in cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is awesome. They have so many good things going on over there, and I love checking in and seeing what they have going on. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead up to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Use Tuesday Prize Picks discounts, select player rejections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds to turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. So for the Ravens and Bengals game coming up, maybe you want to get something in for Lamar Jackson more on the passing yards, maybe Joe Burrow more on the passing yards. You can do that over on Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 into the app to play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 into the app to play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. We're back for our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this midweek edition of the show. Appreciate everybody again for tuning in today on Locked On Ravens, making us your first listen each and every day and a part of your day in general. Just hit 9,000 subscribers recently. We're going for 10K next. So if you want to be a part of that 10K journey, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form, also in audio form. We're continuing to grow the show every single day over there and really appreciate all the audio listeners too. It's been such a journey starting off in audio form and then adding video form. Obviously, social media has been great as well. Subtext, the communities have been unreal here on Locked On Ravens. But let's talk about some of the positive moves of Baltimore's deadline. Obviously, when you talk about the Trey White deal, it's going to be career rejuvenation project is what I'm probably going to label this as for the Ravens. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. The tough thing with Trey White is the injury situation. I think that's what it is for him. But the thing that's going for him, at least, is he's coming into a new system, new team that has historically been able to get the best out of some of these veterans who a lot of people feel are washed or might not have the ability they once did. Now, Trey White, Pro Bowler in Buffalo, amazing talent there, but he's just not the same player he was. But if the Ravens can use him in a different role, that's why for me, I love him in the safety role. I think that if you can move Trey White to safety, that is where he might be best suited in this defense, because I don't think he's taking snaps from Brandon Stephens. I've seen a lot of that where I think people either think he's better than Brandon Stephens, which is definitely not true at this point. I know Brandon Stephens has had somewhat of a tough year in different aspects, but Trey White, in my opinion, is not better than Brandon Stephens. I don't think he's going to take snaps from Nate Wiggins. I don't think you want that. You could in certain situations where maybe you want to value the vet experience, but the Rams clearly didn't see anything that they liked to keep him around. And the rumors and reports were he was just going to get cut if the Rams didn't trade him. Baltimore obviously did the 7th round pick swap to just assure that they were able to get him on their team. But one of the big things is that Trey White is one of the best dudes in the league. Like, you hear it from everyone, and that's a really cool thing for this locker room, because I think that stuff can rub off on Nate Wiggins. It can rub off on Brandon Stevens, Marlon Humphrey. He sees the game. And one thing that Bill Belichick said, this was brought to my attention just yesterday, that Bill Belichick said about Trey White when Trey White was in Buffalo, was that Trey White, once he figures out your weakness, he will go and exploit it over and over and over again. So there's that viral clip of Trey White. The Ravens playbook went crazy in the win. Remember, the pages flew out on the field, and Trey White ran over, picked it up, and it was kind of like a joke type thing as he was trying to read the playbook. But that's kind of like who he is. It's like he wants to be able to identify the opponent's weakness. And so even if on the field he's not performing all that great, I think that his veteran leadership and just the fact that he's been there will really help the Ravens. And maybe that's what they value here. It's just another veteran in that cornerback room, where I believe the oldest in that group is Arthur Millette, I think. Let's do some quick checking on that. I assume it's Arthur Millette. Could be Marlon Humphrey. I also just could be terribly wrong. Arthur Millette's 31. Yeah, I think Arthur Millette is the oldest corner in that room at 31 years old. So Trey White comes in at 28 years old and will be able to, or 29 years old, and will be able to provide, I think, veteran leadership to me. But obviously, what a lot of people are wondering is like, okay, well, veteran leadership, that's great and all, but what about on the field? I'm not expecting too much. And I don't think anybody should be expecting too much. I just think that you have to temper expectations with this, considering the injury history he's had over the last couple of seasons. He's clearly lost something there. Who knows how much, but was not good on the field with the Rams, and they ended up just making him inactive as they tried to move him. So new situations can do wonders for people, right? Can do wonders for guys. But we'll have to see how that all unfolds. Then obviously with Deontay, we talked a lot about that Deontay move over the course of the last week, so don't have to get too much further into that. But in terms of the depth, Baltimore did upgrade. But again, it all kind of goes back to the pass rush and is like, well, you did upgrade your depth at certain positions, but the one that you probably needed the most, you didn't end up getting. And it's tough. I think it's a miss personally, but there are silver linings in these deals, because I'm not trying to sit here and say that Baltimore did nothing well at this deadline and there's nothing to look forward to and these deals are terrible and you shouldn't like anything. I'm not saying that, but I think we have to just temper the expectations. I think this is still a Super Bowl team, hopefully, right? And by that, I don't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl. By that, I mean they can compete for a Super Bowl. You got to get there first. But I just think the disappointment also lies in the fact that, you see the Chiefs get DeAndre Hopkins and Josh Uche, and those are considered more needle movers than the guys the Ravens got. Amari Cooper is considered more of a needle mover. And, you see other teams get this and other teams get that. And Baltimore got guys. They made moves. But even with the draft pick aspect of things, people are disappointed in the fact, and we're kind of roasting the Ravens. Is like, all right, you're really going to have – it's actually down to 10 draft picks now because of that pick swap that the Ravens gave up. It was their 7th this year for the Rams' 7th next year. So it is down to 10 draft picks. Eric Acosta down to 10 draft picks for the 2024 draft projected. But are 10 draft picks really going to make this roster? Is that really what it's going to be? So the Ravens are rolling with what they have, right? They like their guys. I know a lot of people get frustrated by that, but it essentially is what this team is. They like their guys, and we're going to see. So it's all we can got to do now is move forward, see what this team can do. And they got a big game coming up against Cincinnati tomorrow night. Crazy. It's already coming up so fast. So coming up in the final part of the show here, we're diving into a little bit of a look ahead, both for that Cincinnati Ravens game and for if there's any other move the Ravens could make over the next couple of days or couple of weeks. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch and enroll the game, you can check out the latest stats, your live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You're started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you still on this Wednesday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody again for being here today. Just as a reminder, we will be going live after the Ravens and Bengals game tomorrow. Obviously, we do game day episodes every Sunday, but with tomorrow being a Thursday game, obviously the game day episode will just be regularly scheduled weekday programming there. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form as well, whether you're an everydayer. Again, really appreciate people who tune into the show every day and show the support that way. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. Hopefully you stay a while. And if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you for your support as well. And thank you for tuning in to the show. And whether you're listening every day, new, somewhere in the middle, it does mean a lot to me that you tune in and give me a listen here on the show. We're building something great here. And just again, can't express enough gratitude for that. But let's now dive into this kind of looking ahead period for the Ravens, because I know I teased the Cincinnati game first. I want to just kind of wrap up the deadline conversation here. There are still avenues for the Ravens to make some level of a move. Who knows what that move actually is? Who knows what it could be? But we could see, I'm not expecting too much. Like, as each day goes by, there's less and less likelihood that a guy does get released. But we have seen a couple of players get released across the league here just because guys are adding and other guys just want out of their situations. So not a ton of needle movers right now for me, but do the Dolphins give Calais Campbell a shot to go somewhere else? And is that place maybe a Ravens reunion? That could potentially be an option. I'm not holding my breath here. I think realistically, this, or at least some very similar version of this, is probably the roster Baltimore is going to go into the postseason with, obviously assuming they get there. I'd be pretty shocked if they didn't, but crazier things would happen. This is probably the roster they're going to have to try to compete for a Super Bowl with, and it just is what it is. So I think it's a good enough roster to do that, to compete, but again, it's a risk. It's a risk to take and make sure that, you have everything on your roster. Do you not? I know that the returns lately have not been great, but we will see how that all unfolds. Well, let's look ahead a little bit to that Cincinnati game. Really big game for both teams, honestly. Cincinnati coming in at 4-5, and they're going to need a lot to get in the playoffs this year. They do. They're 4-5 right now. If they lose to Baltimore, they'll be 4-6. And if you lose two more games after that, I don't think 9-8 is good enough to get you into the playoffs in this AFC, despite how kind of mediocre it's been over the course of this year. So Cincinnati needs this game badly, but they could be without T. Higgins. Looks like it's going to be that way for them. They might be without a couple of other key contributors as well. On the Ravens side of things, you're 6-3 if you're Baltimore, but 4 AFC losses if you lose this game through 10 weeks would be pretty disastrous when it comes to trying to find seeding and kind of making sure that you almost control your own destiny in a lot of different ways. So that, to me, is kind of the big thing here, where Baltimore does need this game for multiple different reasons. Obviously, divisional record's a big thing if you're competing for the North Conference record. This is a hugely important game, especially, and we talked about this with Kaji Ismail on Monday, former Ravens receiver, Super Bowl champion. Q said that, look, the fact that they squandered that opportunity against Cleveland makes this game even more important for the Ravens, because you do not want to drop to 1-2 in this division, especially with 2 games coming up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You can't have that, because Pittsburgh right now, they added a couple of pieces at the deadline. And I think that also is where some frustration, just on a side note, came from the Ravens deadline compared to Pittsburgh's, even though, value-wise, I think they honestly got kind of similar value between Deontay and Trey White versus Mike Williams and Preston Smith. But regardless, I still think that for the Ravens, you need this game. Now, you don't miss the playoffs if you lose it. Your season's not over if you lose it. But I think you can set a pretty big precedent moving forward for them, especially because we know how that first game went. 41-38 in overtime. Absolute, game of the year type stuff. And it was all offense. Ravens defense couldn't stop Joe Burrow. The Bengals defense couldn't stop Lamar Jackson. But, and I'll kind of say this here, the Ravens defense has such higher upside than the Bengals defense does. I am so low on the Bengals defense. I mean, Trey Hendrickson's a heck of a player. Heck of a player. I don't trust anybody else outside of that. Nobody. That defense is terrible. And while the Ravens defense certainly has flaws and their pass rush has been terrible and their secondary has had lots of bad moments, that Bengals defense is worse. And while Joe's playing awesome football and Jamar Chase playing awesome football, not having T. Higgins, if that is the case in this game, that will hurt them. Not having Zach Moss, who's great in pass protection. They brought in Khalil Herbert, but who knows if he even plays. I don't know if there's going to be enough time for him to get up to speed on the playbook. Not having Zach Moss will be a big deal. Orlando Brown Jr. was upgraded to limited on Tuesday, so he'll probably play in this one. But there are just so many things to look out for here for Cincinnati that I feel decently confident. Not all the way confident, obviously. You never know how these AFC North games go. And obviously, I think people felt decently confident outside of the whole trap component with Cleveland, and they lost that game. But Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh love the primetime spotlight. It's been great to them over the course of their careers, especially together. So I will say that I feel confident in the Ravens winning this game, but you cannot just go out there and expect to win. You have to play this team well. 4-5. I think they're better than their 4-5 record shows, but their record also is what they are, right? Your record is what it says you are, and that is what it is. So this Bengals offense is awesome. The Bengals defense is not, and it's up to Baltimore to be able to expose Cincinnati's weaknesses on defense, much like they did in week number 5, but you also have to be able to go out there and make sure that you can put up points on offense like you did in week 5. And that, to me, is I think where Baltimore is going to make their bread and butter in this game. That's all I have for you here today, though, on this episode of Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form as well. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens coverage as we get ready for that Ravens and Bengals game Thursday Night Football. So be sure to stay tuned to see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.